Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Manage Engine, Active Directory, and IT Security Webinar Series 2018. For those of you who joined in early, please make yourselves comfortable, probably with a glass of water. A notepad and a pen would also be useful. So the workshop would be beginning in a few moments, so please make yourselves comfortable. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Manage Engine, Active Directory, and IT Security Webinar Series 2018. For those of you who are new here, I am Mark Lloyd, IT Security Specialist, and on behalf of the AD Solutions team, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you here. Before we start, we'd like to do a small check to ensure that nobody misses out on today's workshop. So please type in a yes or okay if you can hear my voice and see my screen clearly. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Iyad. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way, I'd also like to tell you that if you have any questions during the course of this session, please type them into the chat window and we'd be happy to answer them. I also have a product expert here with me who would resolve all of your questions for you today. Okay. So if you've not been a part of yesterday's webinar, on Active Directory monitoring essentials, about the various activities that you must track to bolster IT security and meet compliance mandates, wherein we discussed about tracking log on log off activity, monitoring privileged group membership changes, privilege escalation, um, detecting account lockouts, and troubleshooting them. So if you'd like to receive a copy of yesterday's webinar, please put in your email and I would send them to you. And today we'd be looking at enhanced threat detection with machine learning and user behavior analytics. Today is day 2 of our webinar series of 2018, and the agenda would be as follows. Why is user behavior analytics needed? How UBA works? How we would model normal behavior, detecting insider threats with user behavior analytics, UBA versus compromised account lateral movement versus malware attacks, and more. So there is a lot in store for us today. So diving straight in. So what is UBA? What is user behavior analytics? So analytics has always been there from the start. For example, firewalls. They scan packets and other metadata. Antivirus. They scan your file systems for malware and malicious code. But user behavior analytics, on the other hand, focuses on what the user is actually doing, the applications he launches, his network activity, his log on and log off times, the number of files he accesses, the processes he runs, and if those files are critical files, UBA also makes note of that. So it analyzes patterns of usage to indicate unusual or anomalous behavior. So regardless of whether the activities are coming from a hacker, from an insider, or even malware or other processes, UBA is taking note of all of this. All right, so you wouldn't need a separate system to monitor your attacks from hackers and attacks from insider threats. But before we proceed, I would like to tell you that although UBA won't prevent hackers or insiders from getting into your system, it can quickly spot their work and minimize damage. So if you have a user behavior analytics system in place within your IT environment, that wouldn't ensure that it would prevent hackers or insiders. All that a UBA solution can do is that it can notify you as and when that activity is occurring so that you can act immediately on remedial. Okay, so why is UBA needed? User behavior analytics was first applied in the field of marketing, and that was to help companies understand and predict customer buying patterns. Right. So now, even as the threat landscape continues to evolve at an alarming rate, Gartner predicts that the market for UBA will grow steeply in the years to come. This growth can be attributed to a user behavior analytics solutions, insider threat, and compromised account detection features. So these are found wanting in the existing security solutions. If you're not already familiar with UBA, I'm sure that you'd have something to take away from today's session. Okay, so in today's behavioral analytics session, today behavioral analytics is used to detect potential threats in the cybersecurity space. So I would like to quote two key findings from the Verizon data breach investigation report. 28% of all breaches 28% of all security breaches involved internal actors, internal people who were on your employee roles. So existing solutions are predominantly designed to protect enterprises against external threats and not trusted employees. By focusing on external threats, Enterprises often overlook rogue insiders abusing access, as well as attackers who have become very good at looking like ordinary employees once they're inside your network. So this is why a UBA solution differs from a traditional security tool. It focuses on the behavior of users within your enterprise, and it provides defense from your internal threats. Another important statistic is that 68% of all breaches took a month or longer to discover. So this delay in detecting threats is because of the large number of false positives that existing security solutions create. So this results in professionals missing out on a critical alert in a haystack of insignificant warnings. So caught between setting a lower threshold for alerts and triggering a lot of false positives, or you're caught between configuring higher threshold values and missing out on a threat, on an actual valid threat. All right, let me repeat. If you set lower threshold values to trigger alerts, you may be triggering a lot of those alerts, and you may get a lot of false positives. And on the other hand, if you configure a higher threshold, you might face the risk of actually missing out on a real security threat. So what would most of us do? We'd uh, resort to choose the former by setting lower threshold values and triggering a lot of false positives, which we would have to go through manually, and occasionally we may miss out on a few. All right. So UBA solutions reduce the number of false positives and buy ample time for security professionals to focus on the real indicators of compromise. Okay. So how does UBA work? So the first thing that user behavior analytics does is that it collects information on users over extended periods of time, right? You collect information. So once all this information is collected, it analyzes all the user information, it models and creates a baseline of normal activities. This baseline is specific to individual users. So now that you've collected information, you've modeled that particular information specifically for individual users, now you define you define thresholds. So the system would define thresholds based on how the user actually behaves in his own environment. Say John logs in at 8 in the morning, he logs off at 4 in the evening on a regular basis. Uh, um, over a span of time, UBA would recognize that this span of 8 to 4 is John's working hours, and any deviation from this would have to be notified to the security personnel. So finding deviation from the baseline of normal activities is the fourth step. So once UBA finds the deviation from the norm, it would notify a security personnel, and it doesn't end there. Let us say that Mark has has gradually moved from logging on at 8 a.m. in the morning to 10 a.m. in the morning. UBA would update this particular threshold, and in future, even if Mark logs in at 8 in the morning, that would show up as an anomaly, right? So you've got to collect, model, define, find, notify, and update. So this is what UBA does for you. So while the existing solutions use static threshold values, your existing security solutions use static threshold values. UBA uses an analytical approach, that is a combination of data analytics and machine learning, to define dynamic thresholds. So this is based on the real world user behavior, like I said. So whenever there is a deviation from that norm, the solution notifies the concerned personnel. So another cornerstone of UBA as we would like to call it, is the premise that human behavior is hard to mimic, right? So what this does is that even when an external entity, when an attacker manages to get control of uh, an employee's account, it would be hard for them to mimic that particular user's personal behavior, right? So even when this external entity manages to break into your network, it is going to be hard for them to mimic your user's personal behavior. The attacker wouldn't know the attacker wouldn't know the activity that the user has been doing on a regular basis, his log on times, his log off times, the files that your employee has been accessing. So he is going to make a lot of noise within your environment. And if your attackers generally want to be stealthy, they do not want to make a lot of noise. And if you have a UBA solution in place, it would detect all this noise and help you detect an attack and act on it quickly. All right. So UBA solutions are built on machine learning. So does that mean human intervention is no longer required? Certainly not. Like I told you, intervention is needed, just that it is required less comparing to the security solutions. The solution cannot differentiate between a malicious insider with an ulterior motive and a careless one who has simply misclicked. You would still receive that alert, although it would reduce the number of false positives, right? How do you detect insider threats with user behavior analytics? How do you decide who the bad guys are? So according to securityintelligence.com, 40% of your threats come from outsiders, 45% of threats are 44.5% of your threats are from malicious insiders, and 15.5% are simply uh, inadvertent actors, right? So what if a disgruntled employee departing from your organization decides to exfiltrate data? He knows the location of your critical documents, and he decides to copy a handful of the most important files. He's also aware of your organization's alerting system, and he is careful not to trigger an alert. This is where user behavior analytics would come in place. Let me just give you a quick overview of how AD Audit Plus's user behavior analytics looks like. So let me just show you. When I log in, this is my AD Audit Plus console, and if I log into this, I would find an analytics tab here. Okay. Simply clicking on this brings me into a summary, my summary of all anomalies within my environment. So it shows unusual logon failure count, uh, unusual file activity count, the first time a new process has been run on a particular server. So this gives you a snapshot of all the unusual activity within your environment over the past 30 days. You can also choose to define if you want to review this activity on a regular basis, you can define the period for the last 24 hours, and you can view all activity over the past day. So you can define your time period. You can also define your business hours, activity within your default business hours, and activity during your non-business hours. And or like ADR Plus, all these reports are exportable. You can add this report to your dashboard. You can schedule this report to be sent to you or to be saved at a local path. So all user behavior analytics within AD Audit Plus has all the functionalities that AD Audit Plus offers, right? So, getting back to our insider threats exfiltrating data, Let us say that Mark chooses to uh, access a particular file, a particular server. He goes into the local disk, creates, copies all the files within this. Okay, he copies all your program files and he pastes them in a new location, say an external drive. All right, hold on a minute, let me do that again for you. Okay, so let us say that Mark copies all these files, creates a new folder, so he pastes all these files. So he creates a lot of file activity within your environment, right? So all these files are to be sent to a hacker who would in turn use all these files against your environment, right? So now what would AD Audit Plus, or what would the user behavior analytics module show you? So if I go into my analytics, so now that I have my servers configured, AD Audit Plus has started collecting information from this particular file server. It would the user behavior analytics would have analyzed Mark's normal behavior. Let me show you what his normal behavior would have been. Let me show you his usual. Let me choose my user Mark, right? And select activity for which I want to view his normal activity. Okay, you can see that his file activity count, Mark's file activity count between 11:17 p.m., between 11 p.m. and 11:17 p.m. is around 200 files. Yeah. And if Mark makes file changes, if modifies or does activity of over 1,700 files, you would receive an alert, right? So that is threshold. So when I go to my unusual file activity, yeah, you see that I receive alerts for clicking on the details gives me the actual file which was modified. So all these okay. I go back to my analytics tab, unusual file activity. An unusual volume of file activity shows me the number of events that Mark has created. All right. So because of the low file activity, this breach would have gone undetected if not for a UBA solution. A UBA solution, though, knows how many files the user has actually accessed and the time of day that the user usually accesses those files. So there would clearly be a spike if any activity has been occurring. Okay. So moving forward to a user behavior analytics solution versus a compromised account lateral movement. So according to cybrary.it, 59% of attacks involve attempted lateral movement, and 39% of attacks use the victim primarily for island hopping. Okay, so what is lateral movement? So an attacker first establishes a foothold within your network. He gets local privilege, he escalates his privilege, and harvests admin credentials. Okay, he then does his internal recon. He finds, he identifies computers and other systems connected. He uses your Q user IP config system info queries, and he harvests other account credentials, other computers' credentials using by dumping the memory using Mimikatz, PW pump, etc. So once he's harvested credentials, he would try to move laterally, that is, try to get access of another machine within your environment. So he would have to access this particular machine using remote desktop protocol. So this stage within achieving lateral movement is where user behavior analytics would identify your that an attack is in place. Okay, so the attacker knows that the administrators typically check for high volume of failed logins. So high volume of failed logins would generally detect a brute force attack, and your existing IT security solutions would already have in place an alert to show you that. But in such attacks wherein it involves lateral movement with harvested credentials, an existing solution wouldn't be able to alert you. Right. But the UBA solution, however, raises the alert because hosts on the network were accessed for the first time by remote logon from the attacker's client machine. Okay. Let me show you how UBA works within our AD Audit Pluses. So if I look at the normal behavior for Mario, let me take okay. I'm choosing Mario here. Okay, so Mario, and I run a report on him on the usual hosts accessed by Mario. So Mario is new to my environment and he hasn't accessed any host within my environment as of now. Okay. Now if he attempts to connect to ADAP-WS to this computer within my domain, he attempts to connect with his credentials. And he establishes a connection to that computer via remote desktop. Okay, so now that he has already taken control of this particular computer. This is the first time that Mario has accessed this particular machine. I go back to my reports. I go to my home, and immediately I receive an alert that Mario has accessed this host, ADAP WSMS, like I showed you, the domain, and that it was the first time that he has accessed it. Okay, if I go into my analytics reports, first time source access, I find that Mario has accessed this machine at this particular time. So you get the who, when, what, and where using this report. And so now if I go back and access that computer with the same account, I wouldn't receive this alert. Thereby, I needn't establish fixed thresholds. This is how machine learning and advanced analytical capabilities would help you detect threats that occur within your environment, right? Okay, so let us say that we have an insider threat. Like I told you, human behavior is hard to mimic, and the attacker, let us say that he has access of a particular user account within your environment. So he doesn't know when this user usually logs on within your domain. So let us consider, okay, let me take, sorry. I go into my analytics. I go to my normal behavior reports. Okay. I choose Abby. Okay. I choose the logon time. And I run a report on this. So I find that Abby generally logs on at between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. in the evening. Okay, so his normal behavior is between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Abby logs on only between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. But now it's 11:30 p.m. and let me show you what would happen if Abby attempts to log on during this particular time. So let us say that an attacker has control of Abby's account, and since he is unaware of uh, Abby's usual logon time, or if Abby himself with malicious intent tries to log on to your system during non-business hours, you should receive an alert, right? Let me try to log in with Abby. Okay, so Abby's into my network right now. And since this behavior has deviated from his normal behavior, I should receive an alert stating that Abby was okay. So his general end time is at 5 p.m. and his general start time is at 8 a.m. But he has logged in between 11 p.m. and 12 a.m. Okay, so with a normal security solution in place, you wouldn't be able to receive such granular filters. So if I show you his, let me consider the normal behavior reports for Mark. Okay. So Mark is my default user. I use his account for all activity. I run a report. And I find that Mark's general start time is between 9 p.m. and 1 p.m. Okay. Let me choose Mark again for a different activity. Okay, so all these thresholds, all these values are unique per user. So while existing, okay, so now that we've done with lateral account movement, let me show you how UBA weighs up against malware. So this is a list of the cyber attacks that had occurred within the year of 2017. So there was Siva, Spora, Crisis, Petya, WannaCry. So most of these attacks were using a malware. So let us consider this scenario. An employee clicks on a malicious link, immediately downloading a malware that encrypts data and starts spreading across the network. So what would the key indicator of compromise be? Yeah, it would be a new process that has run on a particular host. So how does UBA help detect this? So it monitors your environment for the usual processes running within your computers, and if a new process or an unusual process is run or is executed, UBA would detect before the files are even encrypted or files are even modified. Let me give you a quick demo of how this would work. Okay, so Okay, now I have a process here, and if I accidentally run this particular program, or if this program is executed, a malicious program is executed on my computer, I should receive an alert, right? This is a critical event, a critical security event within your environment. Let me go to AD Audit Plus. Okay, so if I go to my Analytics tab and I look for unusual process activity, I would find that this alert shows up here, right? I find that Do You Wanna Cry was was executed at 10:49 p.m. on this particular machine. Okay, so this is the power of user behavior analytics. This enables faster detection of potential threats to your environment. Okay. So to give you a quick overview of what we've been doing all this through this webinar, we looked at why user behavior analytics is necessary, how user behavior analytics works. We've been detecting insider threats with user behavior analytics, about wherein we discussed how unusual logon times are being notified to you, how unusual file activity can be notified. Um, we further went through how UBA can help detect compromised account lateral movement, how UBA weighs against malware attacks. Okay, and all through this while I've been using a tool called AD Audit Plus to give you and for those of you, and for the benefit of those of you who are new to AD Audit Plus, or perhaps new to Manage Engine itself, let me give you a brief overview. Manage Engine is a brand that is trusted by a whopping 3 of every 5 Fortune 500 companies. It offers a wide suite of IT solutions. AD Audit Plus is a Gartner-recognized IT security and compliance solution from Manage Engine stable, and with over 200 event-specific reports and real-time alerts, it provides information on changes to both the content and configuration of Active Directory. It looks at Active Directory, Azure AD, Windows servers. It also provides thorough access intelligence for workstations and file servers, that is, including your Windows servers, your NetApp, EMC storage. And it also monitors system configurations, your program files, your folder changes, and it ensures file integrity across your domain. You can also track changes across your printers, removable storage devices, etc. So these the capabilities are endless. For example, let me give you 5 key functionalities out of the myriad of different ones. So you can trace your user footsteps. You can gain insight into user log on and log off activity. You can troubleshoot account lockouts like we did yesterday. You can protect your sensitive data across all your Windows servers, file servers, failover clusters, and you can also monitor your privileged users, your privileged group membership changes, if privileged escalation has occurred, and it can also actively respond to threats. It can send you an alert, And you can also configure AD Audit Plus to trigger a script to stop the attack right in its track. Okay, to help you evaluate the product thoroughly, we offer a fully functional 30-day free trial. All you've got to do is just go to adauditplus.com, okay, and hit download. We offer it in a 32-bit installation and a 64-bit installation. Let me quickly put this link in the chat window so that you have access to it. You can download AD Audit Plus for free. There's a personalized free guide tour of the product that you can schedule with our experts. Simply go to adauditplus.com and you can install, set up, configure, and start tracking all changes within just 30 minutes. You would start receiving alerts. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me today. We also have 2 more webinars coming up next week, that is on critical security events that you need to track and how you can go beyond auditing and use logs to reinforce your network security. Okay, these would be conducted by my colleagues, Sid and Niyati. If you'd like to receive a copy of today's webinar also, please write to me at mark.lloyd@manageengine.com or simply put in your email address and I would be happy to send them over. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the chat window or personally via email. Thank you for showing interest in this webinar series. I would be here for the next 10 minutes to answer all your questions. You have been a lovely audience. Thank you. And that's it from me. Cheers.